workshop. And my name is John Hilary. I'm from War on Want. And Ian?
I'm Ian Furness, Brooklyn PCS Union in Sheffield.
And I think we're the sort of co-hosts, but it's very much a circular thing. And this hour is meant to be looking at the relationship between TTIP and climate change, which, to be honest, in all of the lots and lots of things we've been doing on TTIP, climate change hasn't been the big thing that people have been drawn out about yet, but it is absolutely and totally linked in. What's we meant to do with the West? Are we meant to come up with great thoughts?
Possibly.
So you're doing the writing, you're just shouting on that?
Sorry? No, I'm just
Okay.
leaving that.
Look, if anybody does anybody want to volunteer to put something on a flip chart? It's £10, isn't it? No, listen.
I will.
Go on, Kelly.
Thanks, Gary. And then we thought we'd sort of start by just going around the room and saying who people are. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you really know about TTIP? 10 being top trump, 1 being you know what it stands for, but not much else. So I'm going to go this way so we can start off.
Should we use this just for ideas at the end?
Yeah.
Rather than general notes?
Oh, yeah.
Bullet points.
If we get 3 big ideas,
Yeah.
So I'm John Hilary. I'm the Executive Director of War on Want. I've written the little booklet on TTIP, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to say I've got a 10. It is my specialist subject, but almost everything else I feel.
I'm Ian Furness. I'm the branch chair, regional organiser for the UWP PCS in Sheffield. I'm also a member of the Communist Party, and off 10 miles plus 7, 8, something like that.
I'm Peter Murray. I'm Secretary of the Green Party Trade Union Groups and Green Left, and I'm videoing this for the organisers of this conference. If you don't want to be videoed, as Suzanne said, just let me know. I think my knowledge, as I've videoed previous speakers on TTIP, I think my knowledge is probably about 5 or 6 on your scale.
My name's Carrie. I'm a member of the People's Assembly in Sheffield, part of the national organisation. Obviously, I'm a member of the Communist Party. We do normally, we'd be up the road doing a People's Assembly stall. I think some of them are. But we've also done a lot on TTIP, and we got, for a Morning Star Readers and Supporters meeting, we've got a woman called Linda Coucher, who's Stop TTIP, and I'm on the Stop TTIP email list, and it's 8 or 9 informative emails every day, and it's very, very strong. I mean, so I'd rate it at about 8 out of 10.
Yeah, my name is Peter Garbutt. I'm in the Green Party here in Sheffield. I'm the one who's led the Green Party's campaign on TTIP in Sheffield. I reckon my knowledge is somewhere around the same as Carrie's, about 8, something like that.
My name is Ian Willetts. I'm from Huddersfield, so I'm part of Kirklees campaign against climate change. So we do various campaigns, but one of our strengths is about keeping fossil fuels in the ground. So we do TTIP campaigning about last year and a bit now, linking up with an NHS campaign also in Huddersfield around Dewsbury, in Kirklees around Dewsbury. And I'd say, well, it ranges depending on what I've read and where I think things are, and my understanding of where the negotiations are, between probably a 4 and a 7.
Dick Pitt, I'm in Socialist Workers' Party and in Palestine Solidarity campaign, and we've organised this meeting. If you haven't got a flyer on TTIP, I guess I'm somewhere 4 upwards, but working on it.
I'm interested in environmental issues. I guess my figure would be about 5.
I'm Jill Desforges, and I'm a mum and a grandparent, and I voted for Jeremy. And I think probably about 2.
I'm Hugh. I'm president of Global Health Medicine in Sheffield. Medicine is a student charity organisation nationally that campaigns on global health issues. So I've heard a lot about TTIP in terms of its effect on health and on the NHS, not so much about the effect on climate change. So I would say my knowledge is probably a 6 or 7.
And my name is Suzanne Jeffrey, and I'm chair of the Campaign Against Climate Change. And I'm here for two reasons. One is to deepen my knowledge and understanding about TTIP and its impact, and particularly the impact it would have on tackling the climate issue. And I'm also looking to open up that discussion about how different groups can work together in a broader movement to take on the bigger forces that are preventing us from doing the work that we need to do.
I'm Matthew Reeves, Secretary of Sheffield People's Assembly. As Cara said earlier on, we've been doing lots of campaign work against TTIP, also a member of the Socialist Workers' Party, and probably on a scale of 1 to 10, about 4, I think.
Just for people who come, we're doing this sort of scale of 1 to 10, how much you already know about TTIP?
Scale of 1 to 10.
I didn't choose any number you like.
5-ish.
Fantastic. It's looking good already. Got no ones, so everybody's pretty much.
I'm Sue Wild, I'm in Socialist Workers' Party as well, and also one of the Freedom Riders in Sheffield as well, which is about transport and everything, and the way that transport's been privatised this year as well is a big issue for us at the moment, which is going to really affect the atmosphere as well. So that, and for TTIP I've come saying, I want a bit more knowledge about it really. I've read little bits and stuff like that, but it's more knowledge. So my knowledge, I don't know where it is, it's either 3, 4, I don't know.
Hi, I'm Sarah Body. I'm involved in some environmental groups at the University of Sheffield, and I also occasionally attend the Climate Alliance meetings here. I know quite a lot about a lot of things to do with the environment, but I'm going to be your number one. I know nothing about TTIP, that's why, other than it's quite bad, that's why I chose this workshop. So.
And who hasn't introduced themselves?
Yeah, I'm Chris Philpott, Leamington Green Party. So I see this as a threat because it's growth again, and I hate the word economic growth. I think that's the wrong way we're going down. Any more growth is bad for the planet, create climate change. So I know a little bit about it. Obviously, I want to learn more, but I'm definitely anti-capitalist. I don't want any more growth. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
My name is Luke, and I'm here today just to learn, listen, absorb and get more information.
Fantastic. Right, well listen, shall I, what do you think, Lynn? Shall I kick off just a little bit about how TTIP relates to climate change?
I think we can, but I think it'd be interesting because we've got people from outside Sheffield. Do you want to just quickly say in about 30 seconds what Freedom Round is about? I'm sure somebody has some blank looks. I mean, I know it's about from South Yorkshire, but a lot of people out of South Yorkshire probably don't know. So would you want to just give them a quick praise about your heroic deeds?
It started over a year since when they stopped us using our bus passes for the elderly and the disabled on trains, which created a big issue in Rotherham, Doncaster, Sheffield, Barnsley. And Barnsley's been the hub of it really. So what we did, we were that angry about it. We all met at this train station. We all went to the Meadowhall, the big shopping precinct in Sheffield, and from all those 4 cities we all met there, but we all refused to pay our fares on the train there and there, which created a problem for them, how to organise that, because they weren't expecting it really. And then after 6 weeks we managed to get the pass for the disabled. They gave that back and they said yes, you can go free. But for elderly like me, it was half fare. You can use your bus pass, but it's still half fare, which creates a lot of problems for people with disabilities. That's why they were involved with it. But also for elderly people that's quite isolated, and it's about the only thing, the pleasures they have is going on train to the different place. So, and then they arrested 2 of our members as well on the train station. They kettled them on the train station, arrested 2 of them. George, who was one of those arrested, is here today. And he's from Barnsley. And we had a big campaign against that outside the court and everything. And they just stopped the process of having them in court and everything because they hadn't got enough evidence. And we got photographic evidence of the way that people were treated. I mean, 5 people holding a pensioner down with his head between his knees, and you know what I mean. So that was quite a good thing as well. But then this year we've just found out they're changing lots of the numbers in Sheffield on the buses, which is a really confusing thing for people with disabilities and learning difficulties, for elderly people as well, who've known the bus numbers for all their life practically. So I think that's caused a problem, and all the different Stagecoach First and the other ones have all joined together to put it forward that they're changing directions of buses. Where I live, it meant I've only got 2 buses and they're not very good, and one of them was going to be stopped going to town at all, so I only had choice of 1 bus. So there's been a big uproar about that in the community where I live, because there's a lot of elderly people live there, because there only going to be 1. But there are other people that use that bus to take the children to school and other things. What they've done on that, they've backed on that a little bit by saying it'll still go to town, but it's only going to be every hour, which is a real problem. It means somewhere I go every week, instead of catching 2 buses, I've got to catch 3 buses. So, and then the other one was they'd rediverted a bus which went by the hospital from Door, and they'd stop that happening as well. And that has come back. So we've won a little bit of a victory with that. But this is coming in on 1st of October, and they had what they said was a consultation process, but it only lasted 23 days, and it only went to a certain amount of houses. You know, so about 800 people responded to that, and you've got how many in Sheffield? In Sheffield, you know, so how can that be a consultation process? So that's still going on at the moment.
Thanks. I thought it was useful for people to know what you meant by freedom rides, and people need to know what you were talking about.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Sorry if they were a bit long.
No.
I'm not sure how much you wanted to know.
Well, and it was useful for me because I didn't know what it was. So I come up from London, so it's really useful. And in fact, it ties exactly with TTIP, because it's basically exactly the same principle of big business all getting the privatised access to these services and trying to get rid of any type of rules or standards or conditions that prevent them from maximising their profits.
And if they haven't got the bus services, you're going to have more people going to work in a car.
And
that's what the issue
climate
is
change.
as well to do with this.
And I think that's a really good. I mean, it's a really good example of exactly how all these things link up. It's all about capitalist profit motive, and all of the social standards, the environmental standards go by the board. And that is TTIP. In a sense, we know that from what we're facing anyway in our own society. The idea of putting all those things into a trade deal is that you make them effective, what they say, effectively irreversible. Because basically, you can get a new government in, and the new government can say, we want to renationalise the rail, we want to renationalise the health service, we want to renationalise the banks, for God's sake. And then you say you can't, because you've got this thing which trumps your national legislation. A trade deal, a treaty obligation for a state, trumps your national legislation, and that's why it's so dangerous. But Ian, shall I just sort of launch a little bit on that with a sense? I mean, the 3 pillars of TTIP also speak to that. The first pillar of TTIP is deregulation. And this is what we tried to set out in the booklet there for people who want to take that away. Deregulation is right at the centre, because they basically said this isn't like an old style trade deal where you have one side exporting coffee and the other side exporting steel, and you do a little bit of a negotiation, you drop your tariff barriers and everybody's happy. This is not like that. This is a 21st century trade deal, which is actually about regulations, because those are the things which big businesses said are preventing them from maximising their profits. And so you think to yourself, what are you talking about when you talk about regulations? Well, they made a list. Labour standards, environmental rules, food safety rules, public health, all of the things which we would consider to be more important than any trade or commercial profit or anything like that. Those are the things that they consider to be trade barriers. And in fact, the sister organisations we work with in places like Germany and Austria, they've all started putting these great things on the side of hospitals and schools saying, I'm a trade barrier. And T-shirts, I'm proud to be a trade barrier. It's a little bit sort of arcane, a little bit recherché to do that, but you get the idea. So deregulation is the first pillar of TTIP. The second pillar is privatisation. And again, not just privatisation as we know it already, but privatisation without the possibility of taking it back into public hands. And That's not just US corporations coming into Europe, but it's one of the things that the European big business want to get in the USA. Because in the US, they've still got a lot of these local provisions where local contracts from the government will only go to small family firms to keep business and to keep, local jobs. And as a result of TTIP, the official estimates are that we're going to lose 1 million jobs between Britain, the rest of Europe, and the USA. 1 million jobs. So when you get your MPs, a lot of Labour MPs have also done this in the past, saying, it's going to be good for jobs. Even the official estimates show it's 1 million jobs minimum that will go, and the great majority of those are in Europe, not in the States. So Pillar 1, deregulation, Pillar 2, privatisation, and Pillar 3 is this extraordinary new set of corporate courts that TTIP will bring in, this new thing called the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism, the idea that investors are raised to the same status as a nation, and they get to sue our governments in their own special courts, which nobody else has access to, and nobody else will really know what's happening in them. And they can sue not just for loss of contract or anything like that, but they can sue for loss of future profits. Things that the phrase they use is, if your legitimate expectations as to how much you were going to make in the future have been somehow damaged, you get to sue for that. And the examples of this are just extraordinary. Veolia, the French company we all hate anyway because of their work in Palestine, Veolia is suing the government of Egypt for raising the minimum wage. Because if you raise the minimum wage, well, you've damaged Veolia's profits for the future, because they're suddenly going to have to start paying more than they were going to. In Germany, as we know, and again from an environmental point of view, interesting, Germany decided that it was going to move away from nuclear power. So they're phasing out nuclear power, so that by the year 2022 there'll be no more nuclear power in Germany, and they're shifting to renewables. And you think, good on them. Already they've got a third of all energy being generated by renewables in Germany, compared to a pinprick in Britain. And they're being sued for €5 billion by a Swedish company which was operating 2 of the nuclear reactors in Germany. And they said, well, we have plans post-2022 to make more money out of this. And you can't suddenly close that market down. The idea of these trade deals is you can't close the markets down. And you get other situations, Philip Morris suing the government of Australia for making all cigarettes packaged in plain packaging. One which people haven't perhaps heard of so much is Acmea, a Dutch company, successfully sued the government of Slovakia because they were elected on a platform to renationalise the health service. The previous government in Slovakia had opened up the health service to private health insurance. It was very unpopular, so in comes a new government on a ticket to renationalise. They renationalise, and immediately they're sued by this company, Acmea, who was awarded €22 million, and a court in Luxembourg says, we're going to freeze €29 million of the assets of Slovakia just to be sure that this company could get paid if the Slovakian government decides it wasn't going to do so. So you get the picture. Those are the 3 pillars, but there are specific ways in which TTIP hits climate. And there are 4 of them which I think it's good for us to know about. The first of them is just the general stuff about growth. About if you want to try and have a trade deal which sees more and more and more trade, there's no sense of it being a sort of means to an end. This is just in their head an end in itself. No one's calculating what the problem's going to be. They're saying more trade is good, more growth is good, and therefore we need TTIP. But even in their own calculations, the increased trade is going to bring millions of tons of extra CO2 in the atmosphere as a direct result of TTIP. They said that, not us. So if you're thinking about the COP21 talks at the end of this year, and you're putting them together with TTIP, and you're seeing the EU putting itself forward as being a leader in fighting climate change, you need to just say, well, don't be daft. Because what you're suggesting is it's going to be good for everybody to have more and more trade, more cars being exported from Europe as we import more cars from the USA. We already, Britain exports 100,000 tonnes of pork every year and imports 100,000 tonnes of pork every year. You know, ships are passing each other in the ocean with the same stuff on board. But if you've bought into their way of thinking about it, that's good. It's all good business. It's chronic for the climate, but it's good business. So that's the first thing. They've said you're going to get millions. They calculate 11 million tonnes of extra CO2 going into the atmosphere. The second bit is that in TTIP there is a specific focus on energy. And in fact, the European Union wants it to be set aside in a special energy chapter of TTIP. And this is because in the USA at the moment, as you know, there's a massive fracking boom. And so they've got all this shale gas coming on stream in huge quantities. And the European Union looks across the Atlantic and thinks this is useful, not just because it will force down prices for gas in Europe, but also, crucially, it will break the dependence of many European countries on Russian gas and oil. That's not such a big thing for us in Britain, but you go to Eastern and Central Europe and they are absolutely in a different position with all of this. So the idea is you open up the free market, the free trade in shale gas and tar sands oil, which comes down from the Canadian tar sands, is refined in the USA and currently can't be exported to Europe because they have a ban. Unless you've got a free trade agreement, you have to have a license by license exporter. So what they're saying is, let's get TTIP, because that means we're going to be able to get all of that shale gas and all of that tar sands oil flooding across to Europe from the US. Don't worry about the fact that the tar sands oil is known to be the dirtiest, the most carbon intensive, the most polluting of all fossil fuels. Who cares? Let's get it across because it helps us in our attempt to try to isolate Russia, and it helps us in terms of building that transatlantic alliance. And they've called this, let's be absolutely clear what this is. They've said TTIP is the economic NATO. They want to see TTIP reinforcing the isolation of Russia. So that's the second bit, the energy chapter of TTIP. Even if it doesn't become an energy chapter, the energy part of TTIP is the second bit. The third bit is the whole deregulation agenda and how that feeds back into European environmental standards. And there's stacks of stuff in the booklet and all of the other stuff you'll read about the attack on food safety standards and all of that. But in terms of environmental standards, one of the things which the groups in Brussels who work on the environment are really, really up in arms about is the EU's Fuel Quality Directive. The EU brought in the Fuel Quality Directive, the idea of saying this is going to push us towards using cleaner fuels. And suddenly, as a result of TTIP, that's being cast as a trade barrier. And already you begin to see the European Commission backing down as to the sorts of things that it wants to hold in it. So that deregulation agenda in terms of climate change comes straight in at the European level, the Fuel Quality Directive being watered down in order to satisfy US business. And the fourth and the final one of these, which I think is important to know about, relates to the investor-state dispute settlement, these corporate courts whereby US corporations will get this new power to be able to sue governments for the introduction of any new laws or policies. And one of the ways in which this is already being used between the US and Canada is to challenge the fracking ban which Quebec has put under the St. Lawrence River. Quebec, fracking is very unpopular in Canada. There's a big movement against it. Quebec, the state of Quebec, province of Quebec, has come up with a temporary ban, a moratorium on fracking, especially under the St. Lawrence River. Lone Pine comes in as a US company. It's actually, to be frank, a Canadian company, but it has an office in the US through which it's suing its own government. It's suing them for $250 million, saying, you don't get, under free trade, you don't get to close down markets for fracking like that. We have a right to be fracking which trumps your right to protect the environment and the health of your people. And that's exactly what we're going to get here. Because you've got countries like France, Bulgaria, the Netherlands, Scotland, who've all introduced bans on fracking, and those bans are going to be challenged. And the government of this country got the LSE, the London School of Economics, to do a study on TTIP right at the beginning of the negotiations in 2013. And they basically said, yeah, you can expect no extra money, no extra investment, nothing positive from this at all. But you can absolutely be sure that Britain and other European countries will face an even higher level of attack than Canada has faced under NAFTA, the North American version of this. So basically, on all of those fronts, the environment has had it. If you were interested in the slightest in trying to do something about climate change, forget it. If TTIP comes in,